Is this thing on? Here we are at another episode of Date with Destinee. I'm your host, Eric Hansen of Eric Hansen Music, and I dabble in music and promotion. And also, as some of you might have noticed, I'm also doing a podcast. And I'm here with our co-host and namesake of the show, Destinee, who's going to introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Destinee. I am a bartender. I make candles. I guess I would be a chandler. I'm trying to start my own candle business soon. I also have 2 cats, which qualifies me here as the position of crazy cat lady.
And it gives me great pleasure to introduce our special guest, Mr. Jim Ford, who is a close personal friend and a nutritional consultant. And go ahead and please introduce yourself briefly, Mr. Jim.
My name is Jim Ford. I do nutritional consulting. I've known Eric for, how long have I known you?
I think about
10 years or so.
That sounds right.
Yeah. And not sure what else quite to say right now about that.
How do you get interested in? Well, I know that we had worked as Mr. Moms together with our respective kids at the gym doing the Brazilian Jujitsu.
Right.
Ooh.
Right.
And maybe rather than diving right into nutrition, you might have some thoughts about what Jujitsu does for you and how it impacts your daily life.
That's right. I did meet you at a Jujitsu school. You were sitting next to me, and we were watching our kids in class. And I noticed that you were doing some interesting social media posts, and I knew that you must be someone safe to talk to about such things. And next thing I know, you and I were hanging out and having long conversations about that stuff. And yeah, Jiu-Jitsu is interesting. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's wrestling centric. So there's definitely a side to it that's different than, say, striking, martial arts, like punching and kicking, where that bodily compression and the dermal stimulation you receive in wrestling has, as per your question, interesting, positive health benefits, mental well-being. I think that researcher, she's a high-functioning autistic Grandin Templeton, if I have her name right. Mm-hmm. She invented a cow squishing machine. I think at first was just like 2 mattresses and some kind of device that could handle the compressing. And when you squish the cows in before they work their way into the slaughterhouse, it reduces their anxiety levels, and then actually the meat is supposed to be healthier because of that.
Interesting. Do you smash them very quickly, or is it just like a hug?
It's more like, it's sometimes called referred to as the hugging machine.
The hugging machine. We could all use one of those.
Absolutely. And so it basically, yeah, and that is thought to be basically all mammals probably need a certain amount of bodily compression and dermal stimulation or hugs. And
before we kill them?
In order to maintain optimum functioning of the central nervous system. And,
okay.
and lymphocyte system as well, to move lymph. And so we need people, to be smelling them, and the biome enrichment and all that kind of a thing. And and Grandin Templeton. You could look her up on Google and find books and interviews that she's done. She was on 60 Minutes, and I think this dermal compression and bodily, dermal stimulation, bodily compression, it lowers cortisol levels and stimulates serotonin levels, and so optimizes well-being. She came up with other things too, and the way to have the cows wait in line in a particular way so they can't necessarily see each other getting slaughtered, rendered, and so it's like a step beyond kosher, where in kosher, you're not supposed to have the animal like drown in its own blood and things like that. And so I think the typical way a slaughterhouse works is they might kill them with a compressive mechanical energy, bonk to the head, and then, hang them upside down when they cut their heads off to drain the blood out. It sounds pretty gruesome.
Outstanding.
That sounds brutal. I love it. This is why I'm not a
And
vegan.
does that also tie into jujitsu?
Well, it's just so she is a high functioning Asperger autistic, this Grandin Templeton person, and so she figured, so she's hypersensitive, kind of like a raw nerve person, I think, and so she came up with all these methods in order to optimize the way that we receive our meat, and before it's when it's still alive. So I guess so more humanity.
Oh, is that kind of so? Okay, when did you hear about this woman? Was this is this tied to the jujitsu, or did you hear about this woman and it kind of interested you in nutrition?
No, it just I don't know. Back in the 80s, I think I first came across her. There's no real connection to jiu-jitsu. Well, besides that, in jiu-jitsu practice, it's wrestling centric.
Yes.
So, and the strength of Brazilian jiu-jitsu is there's somebody on top of you.
Ah.
So it's one of the best, or probably the best martial art to learn to fight from the bottom. And so you're getting compressed, and your skin is getting, easily dermally abrased sometimes.
Interesting.
So at a certain point when I was practicing jiu-jitsu, I thought about the Grandin Templeton work, like, oh, yeah, it's like having some type of effect on me.
Interesting. That is like a really interesting connection that you made.
Well,
And it's funny because because I don't know much about jiu-jitsu. I don't know much about any martial art actually, because I took taekwondo for I don't know, a couple months when I was younger, but don't know much about any martial arts. But interestingly enough, that when you made that connection, it made sense in my head. Oh, you're absolutely right. Making the connection between this other woman who thought about this unique technique, and then there's now a martial art that also has this unique technique, but in a different sense.
All grappling martial arts, you have that. Mm-hmm. Judo, even Aikido, and Japanese jiu-jitsu, so that's the original jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Greco-Roman wrestling, American freestyle wrestling, like sambo, sumo. But it's a point of distinction from striking arts, where you're receiving blast of kinetic energy that have a different effect, in my opinion, from them being compressed.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And a lot of practitioners talk about how if you take time off, it's best to even come in and have someone sit on you almost in order to keep being used to, if that makes sense, being compressed. It's like
almost like a weighted blanket.
Right now. And weighted blankets are very useful to autistics. And then it was an autistic woman, Grandin Templeton, that came up with the cow hugging machine, because there's something about bodily compression that
makes us feel safe and comfortable.
Right. You're getting hugged by mom.
Oh yeah. Oh, and wow, that's another psychological connection, because it's all from the beginning.
Right. Mm-hmm. There are these trees that people tried to grow in the biosphere experiment. It might be biosphere 1 or biosphere 2. Mm-hmm. They would grow up to a certain height and then fall over.
The tree?
And that's because it's all encapsulated. And, well, there was no wind blowing on the tree, so it was weak. It wasn't getting a hug from Mother Nature.
Oh my gosh, that is crazy.
So they have to install like a critical amount of wind stimulation to if the tree is going to be over a certain height, or it'll grow up and fall over because of the weight, its strength to weight ratio, and holding itself up. And it's designed to be stimulated by the challenge.
Oh my gosh. Like this is such an odd topic because it's now making me think like about how many weird things are like interconnected in our universe. Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Well, there's a reflex that all creatures have. That's the acclimation reflex. So the problem is when it's cold, we put on a jacket or turn the heat up.
Yeah.
And when it's hot, we have air conditioners and things like that. So activating this acclimation reflex within us makes us healthier, but our instinct is to move away from it. And so Wim Hof, I don't know if you've heard of Wim Hof. That would be, you could maybe look him up or something.
Wim Hof?
Wim Hof. I know it's an odd name, but he specializes in things like climbing Mount Everest without oxygen tanks, going mountain climbing in
nothing.
Shorts and tennis shoes.
Oh, I've seen this before. So I actually follow some people on Instagram. I don't remember their names, but I think they live in Iceland, and they do this I thought it was very bizarre, but it was unique, where they go out in nothing but like their underwear, because it's on social media. They don't want to be completely naked, and they take ice baths, and they literally they stand like this in the ice baths, and they just control their breathing. And first of all, so I hurt my hand the other day, and there's actually like a little tiny scar you can see. I made it bleed, and it hurt so badly. And my boss's first instinct was to get like a big bowl and fill it with ice water and dunk my hand underneath it. I couldn't keep my hand under there for more than like a split second. I kept ripping it out. But my boss said, no, you have to hold it under there for 10 seconds. And so I took the technique from the people who take the ice baths, where they're controlling their breathing and they're focused on their diaphragm, just to hold my hand under there for 10 seconds. And oh my God, it burned so badly for 10 seconds. I'm a wimp. But that is just really interesting that you bring that up, because there is some sort of acclimation that we as human beings are supposed to train our bodies to do. That's naturally what we're supposed to be doing.
No, absolutely. And part of health that's neglected in, highly civilized, industrialized countries is we try and make ourselves as comfortable as possible. And so, weight bearing exercise, okay, that seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And then it stresses the system, challenges the system, and it gets stronger. But that's just generating tension for the most part along a vertical, plane. And it probably is another aspect of health that we're neglecting.
Yeah.
That since it takes about 10,000 years for a significant change to occur in the human genome, that 10,000 years ago, we were built to be adaptable to these, more cold, more heat.
Yeah.
But you have to be irritated by it. It has to be a stimulus in order to get that to be active. And we shy away from that, and so that system is getting weaker.
So it's almost like, well, first of all, humans we like to take the path of least resistance. Like you said, we enjoy comfortability. And it's almost like evolutionary wise, we're going to become weaker based off of how comfortable we are as human beings in our luxurious homes. We've got heaters and blankets and warm jackets, and we don't really have much lifting to do because we build technology that does all the heavy lifting for us and does all the building. And then we've got things like washing machines and dishwashers and all of these things that we use on a daily basis that people don't really think about because we're so we were born with them, we're so used to them. But this is initially going to end up making us as human beings weaker in the long term it's not going to affect me or you, but it will affect people, hundreds, thousands of years down the line if we survive that long.
Absolutely. But what it could affect is there's another system, an information system that it's an odd concept, but it's called epigenetics. And so your lifestyle affects the way you express your genetics, and that's epigenetic. And so it can either enhance or lessen an expression of a gene. And the reason we move away from the negative towards the positive, taking the path of least resistance, is because life was so easily uncomfortable 10,000 years ago, where so many people died of food poisoning that to this day we're obsessed with, is the fish fresh? But because we don't have that being stimulated that much, but most of our food is pretty clean, and people still die of all kinds of food borne illness stuff, but not as much. And because of that instinct is just turning in circles, and people are getting neurotic about, is it GMO free? Is it free range? Is it organic? You sure this is fresh? Is this the best? And it's like, it just has to be highly adequate. It doesn't have to be pure, because pure and perfection is a neurosis. It's like a nonstop, nonsensical loop that never gets solved. Oh, this is not clean enough. This is not clean enough. It's highly adequate. But we don't need to use the instinct as much. But so many ancestors died of having to be aware of that. We have to default to negative.
That's almost like instinctually in our brain.
It is.
So I have a few questions, but I'm going to ask them after we take our break.
Oh, okay.
And we're here with Jim Ford, and we'll be right back after this break. What the hell? Whoops. All right. Here we are at Club Dub Studio, and we're back in with Jim Ford, the legendary, very wise gentleman that happens to, I count as a very close friend that I've known for nearly a decade, I think. I actually wanted to interject with some of my own unique experience because some of the things that were being pointed out in pleasure seeking and comfort and in the quieting of the mind and all the kind of things, the physiology of the way the mind works and how it either reacts to stimulus or maybe not under some circumstances. I happened to be on a little trip up to Mount Shasta. And also, this is for Nick because he wanted us to get more buggery into the show. But anyway, he's a previous guest. You can see in the show notes. But anyway, so we're up in the on the snow, and it was a warm, sunny day. And so the ambient temperature must have been, with the sun on your skin, it's like a day at the beach. So we put out this nice, this is about 30 years ago, by the way. It went back when life was interesting. But anyway, we put out this nice foil mat that you might roll out at a beach. And then we put the beach towel over that, and we're sunbathing. And then we took our beers and stuffed them in the snow that's right next to us. So it was like we didn't need to carry a cooler around for obvious reasons. But anyway, as we soaked in the rays, some primordial requirements for compression started to overtake the day, and we were attending to one another's spiritual requirements in the art of the Kama Sutra. And during this, as things escalated, I had my bare foot just jammed into the snow next to the mat for kind of traction and what have you. And ultimately, this is where it remained for the entire ceremony. And once we achieved the ultimate nirvana of the event, I withdrew my foot from the snow, and we might have got kind of dressed back up a little bit. And at this point, I had kind of a feeling of curiosity. I was kind of wondering, gee, how do you have your foot in the snow that long and have that kind of work out? So I tested it, put my foot back in the snow, and sure enough, in about 10 seconds, it's like, nope, you can't do that. So that's another example where the mystic arts, in this case the Kama Sutra, result in the quieting of the mind that allow you to challenge your physiology, and to what I'm hoping that Mr. Jim Ford might agree to be a good example of that science.
Yeah, that's interesting. The main thing is distraction. So when you're distracted, it's amazing if to the level of distraction. So that's an awareness, a focus. And when you're focused, deeply aware of one thing, it can exclude out everything else. To get good at that on a regular basis, you have to, of course, practice it. And then essentially that's an awareness skill. And that's what a lot of meditation practices are based on. You're maybe at first just being aware, like of all the TV channels that are on in your mind at any time, just not trying to control them, just being aware. But then as you move on, with awareness comes control. You could practice an awareness skill of being aware of something more or less in particular. And there seems to be a lot to just practicing that is relaxing. But you were in a state of obviously where you're really distracted, and you're distracted on something that's overwhelmingly positive, that digs into deep within the less than conscious mind, having to do with, one of the 5 F's. And so that's, primordial, reproductive, take care of that even if you're going to die.
Did you say one of the 5 F's?
5 F's. That would be one of the 5 F's.
So one of those is a 4-letter.
So that would be fight or flight, feed or fornicate. And the last F is freeze. And oftentimes that's left out. There's a lot of people call it the 4 F's. There's actually 5, because when you're when you're
like a deer in the headlights.
Yeah, when the system is really activated, overwhelmed, it typically has to do with those 5 subjects and one of the responses, and one of them can be freezing up. And
a lot of people freeze up, actually. That's common.
Exactly, but it's rarely brought up as one of the F's.
Because a lot of people reference fight or flight,
right?
But they'd never reference the whole freezing, right, which is what most people do.
Right. It's maybe I'm a bit of a raw nerve, and it kind of irritates me. Yeah, that it's not brought out. More is that people, they lock up, and there's so many different ways to lock up, and it's a primitive defense response to being overwhelmed. Even though sometimes the overwhelm might be a positive one, but just getting distracted is huge for brain, mind, and so you can feel pretty ill. But if you can find something interesting to watch on TV, you don't feel as bad.
Wow, that's another interesting perspective, because you're absolutely right. You can feel really sick or really cold or really hot, any kind of uncomfortable feeling, but if you have something that is distracting you, that is like pulling your attention away from it, it's almost like those feelings aren't even there.
You have to get out of yourself.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you end up looping on, like feeling a tooth in your mouth that's missing, and you can't stop.
It's almost like, okay, so here's a good example. When I hurt my hand the other day, so I had a procedure done on Monday that was pretty painful, and it was hurting me all day. And once I hurt my hand, I completely forgot about the pain from my procedure, because it just completely distracted me. So that's a really good point.
Desirable pain.
Well,
therapeutic suffering.
Well, S&M.
I know, right? Here's the takeaway, ladies and gentlemen.
We're
Whenever
getting more.
you're in pain, just punch yourself.
Some people seem to be more sensitive.
Yeah.
And so it's like a personality having to do it. So I personally tend towards a runner's high type person. That's my thing. Whereas Eric, he was one of the few people I've met, especially in a fitness situation, where anything that has to do with sweating, Eric calls suffering. And I'm like, suffering? Like, nah, man, like once you start like working out or doing whatever, like it's like I kind of get like ecstatic. And he's like, no, it's just pure suffering. And then Eric just can't stand the way he feels when he sweats. So then I'll see him in a workout class and he's like, don't let him see you sweat. And he's like doing this mantra in order to like keep from aggravating himself with his heat and sweat that he's generating from.
Never let them see you sweat, folks. And I still stand by that.
So,
Oh dear.
So I've been at a gym and Eric's taking an exercise class, and then every time he walks by, he says that, and it's just kind of like a David Letterman joke. Tell it over and over again, and then it starts getting funny again. So yes, but so that's all about attention. What are you putting your attention on? Do you need to get out of yourself? If you expose yourself incrementally to something that's overwhelming, but in incremental fashion, even if it seems like pretty threatening to you, you can, if it's the right kind of challenge, you'll adapt. You'll activate that acclimation reflex. It could have to do with swimming deep in the ocean. Could have to do with holding your breath. Could have to do with getting bodily compressed. Heat, cold, bed of nails,
This can really help you in any survival survival situation that you might be in.
Absolutely, because most people are too comfortable because that's our instinct.
Yeah.
But there also seems to be this instinct that other people have. It's like some kind of shadow of that, where their system knows they need to seek suffering because in the long run it helps you be stronger. You could call it
Marriage.
you could call it.
I'm sorry, I had to do that.
That's right.
That was good.
You could. So you could say attention span, for example. Let's see. You could have hedonism. People are like, oh, hedonism. That's to do what feels good when you want to. So that person's hedonistic. Like, and then we maybe look down on it. And then the worst case scenario is, a homeless person that wants to just do their drugs. But there's also what you might call, if you had a longer attention span, pragmatic hedonism. So pragmatic hedonism, in brief, you could describe as the fastest way to spirituality. And that is, what feels good? Well, not drinking too much coffee. Once you drank too much coffee, not to drink too much coffee.
Yeah.
And then when you work out, don't you feel, unless you hurt yourself, you feel like invigorated, right? Yeah. Later the next day, right?
You feel better. You feel better about yourself as well.
So, but isn't that hedonism? But it's just long-term, long attention span hedonism. So true hedonism is pragmatic hedonism, where you're taking vitamins, eating healthy food, exercising, taking care of yourself, and you cultivate a well-being.
So you're looking for the long-term goals rather than how do I feel right now, right in this instant.
The only difference between medicine and poison is the dose.
Wow.
So if you drank a gallon of vodka in 10 minutes, you'd probably puke and or die.
I would die.
You probably puke beforehand.
Yeah, I'd probably puke and die.
But if you had 10 months to drink that gallon of vodka.
Yeah. You just have a little bit of fun.
Right. And it might even benefit you in some way, in controversial research. The right amount of alcohol might be good. So it's in the theory of knowledge, and most people, it's like they have some form of ADHD, so that limits their conceptual understanding of what is good or bad, like with health food. Well, after working out and you're not overweight, sugar could actually help lower cortisol levels with maybe a third of the population. And so it's actually helping to support you.
Yeah.
So the big picture could be something like, there's no such thing as health food. There's no such thing as junk food. Everything you eat has its qualities. And those qualities might be in agreement with you at the time, in some type of relating, or they might not. So
depends on the moderation.
Right.
Basically.
And then, but if you moderate too much, your body might think it's starving.
Yeah.
And so then that might turn down your hormone levels. And hypothetically, and then looking at some of the research, that could turn down a woman's hormone levels too much. Then her estrogen goes down, and then that could lead to, increased osteoporosis.
What's that?
The weakening of the bones because not enough estrogen, because of not enough body fat.
Me.
And then, so a woman during her fertile years needs to have like a healthy cycle. And one of the ways you know that how are things going, like, well, is that healthy fertility cycle happening? And if it's not, then that could be indicative of there's something going on with estrogen, not enough. And then if there's not enough estrogen, then that could lead to weaker bones.
Wow.
And so I know people that they'll avoid salt because they think salt is bad for them. And then one day they go to stand up and they have postural hypotension. So they stand up and get dizzy because they took too much salt out of their diet.
Oh.
They brought down their blood pressure. It can't adapt fast enough. So, and sodium is one of the necessary electrolytes to help neuroelectrochemical energy flow through the body. But people just identify it as a singular reductionistic factor, like, oh, salt's bad, avoid salt. No, it's the sodium to potassium ratio.
Yeah.
It's, are you holding on the salt? The sodium? Why are you holding on to it? Are you eating too many high glycemic index rated carbohydrates, raising your insulin levels constantly? Then that could lead to your body holding on to the sodium so it accumulates easier in the body. And if you were just like, not eat sugar for 2 weeks, you probably end up pissing away all the excess salt. And
oh, that's not good.
So, well, the excess.
Oh, the excess.
Excess. So if
I didn't catch that.
Right. So the body wants to balance itself, but it adapted 10,000 years ago to that environment that was occurring.
Yeah.
And now we're out of that.
So now we need to balance it.
Right.
And we're so ADHD and hyper like OCD about it that we're kind of compulsive when it comes to being perfect about it.
Well, it's made modern day people, nutty. Like civilization is based on you have to socialize people. Yeah. And a cornerstone of socializing people is to shame and guilt. Yeah. It's where you have to suppress. People have to learn to edit themselves. Mm-hmm. And then when you go into what might be thought of as bad neighborhoods, you have more people in survival mode where maybe they don't want to edit themselves as much because maybe that would be more dangerous for you. Yeah. So then people are relating to each other through one-upmanship and not using their words.
You should write a book.
It's
agreed.
Yeah, you should really write a book. I'd read it. Because I feel like you have like so much knowledge. And I've been interested in nutrition. I just think that what's interesting about you is you're able to connect like something like nutrition in with other factors that are also very important, and other like natural factors and like mysterious factors and universal factors. Like, I don't know, it seems like you're very good at tying these things together. And
it's like a philosophy of, that basically encompasses these areas of apparent expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the philosophy of nutrition.
So I'm going to be nagging you to get to work on that book from henceforth.
Get
Just
the
heads up-
book.
heads
Get
up.
the book.
Yeah, with nutrition, it's really about like I was saying. There's no such thing as health food. There's no such thing as junk food. If you were to, some people are very sensitive to spices, and so somebody else says, "Oh yeah, have this red pepper, have this bell pepper, the cayenne pepper. It's really good for you."
Yeah.
Well, that could completely tear apart somebody's gut. Maybe it has Crohn's. So it's not really health food.
Well,
It's-
I have an allergy to gourds, but it's more like a food sensitivity. So I cannot eat. It's called cucurbitacin. You probably know what it is, but it's in squash and cucumbers and watermelons, cantaloupe, any kind of melon, pumpkin. Cucurbitacin is it's like a toxic enzyme that a small percentage of the population has a hard time digesting, and it makes my stomach really ill. Cucumbers has the most amount of it, so I really have to stay away from cucumbers. But yeah, all of these foods would be considered health foods.
Are pickles okay, or is that?
Nope, can't have pickles.
Damn the devil.
I know, I love pickles too.
How can you be cool as a cucumber then?
I can't.
Or
I
walk
guess
around.
I'm not cool.
Walk around Disneyland with the big pickle. Yeah, there's all kinds of things that different people, the system can't break it down.
Yeah.
And then what's curious is that then people get really irate about like, they have these amazing antipathy, sympathy responses to, like Eric might respond the same to maybe rap music as Bruce Springsteen. And
Well, Bruce Springsteen sickens me, but there is good and bad rap. Although I might have had a more simplistic and distilled position on it, and before I started making some of my own.
right, yeah, I understand. I'm generalizing, and there is some good rap music, and so, but people really get into it's like some kind of instinct. Like, oh, you like spicy food? Oh, you don't like spicy food? What's the matter with you? They're like, there's something amoral about you. You can't, that's ridiculous. You've been sucked into some type of mass hypnosis about the gluten-free religion, and it's just a fashion cult. And well, everybody's a little bit different, and you don't want to use that. Some people will use that. Like they'll weaponize individualism, and they'll, express in a expiring way. Well, everybody's different, and it's not necessarily helpful. It's more like there are these patterns, and you need to you're an individual by definition, but you got to figure out your pattern, and of how you respond. And then as you get that, you'll get older, hopefully. Better than the alternative, and you'll have to change patterns.
Yeah, we like to categorize.
Right.
Humans like to categorize.
Well, yeah, we have to classify, categorize, organize in order
Yes.
for survival, and definitely, and but it needs to be examined, and then there'll be a bulk of the population, the way they do something, and then if you don't do it that way, that's like. They think there's something wrong with you, and that you just need to
conform.
Toughen up as
Yeah.
the form of you just take it anyway, and then that'll toughen you up.
Just do it anyways. Yeah.
And no, that'll overwhelm the person instead of challenge them. They need to challenge themselves incrementally in order to make yourself stronger, and then you could even lose that acclimation reflex if you don't use it. And we need constant challenges to our acclimation system, and if we don't, that might even make our immune system weaker.
Yeah.
Make us more susceptible to all kinds of diseases. Just like our bones get weaker if we don't lift.
We need
objects.
calcium. Oh, I need calcium.
Well, even eating plenty of calcium, the bones will get weaker unless you challenge them.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pick up heavy objects.
Yeah.
People want to take it easy, and then that leads to their destruction. They hyper nurture themselves to death. And then you can connect that to someone that it's metaphorically someone that's in the survival consciousness. Someone that eats too much sugar could be using their credit card too much in a certain kind of way. I'm not saying that that's completely synced up. It's just people want that quick fix, the short, the immediate gratification.
Immediate gratification.
And one of the parental things you have as an instinct, but when you're parenting a kid, most people have this instinct for like, oh, I just can't give my kid whatever they want when they want it. Mm-hmm. It seems to make them behave worse.
In the long term, absolutely.
Right. And we do that with dogs.
Oh, that's a good point too.
So once we grow up, we need to do that with ourselves.
We need to be able to manage and balance our own immediate gratification, which is why social media is so bad.
Absolutely. And then social media, the market, wants your business. Yeah. So they're trying to figure out how to get around.
They're trying to trick you in every way, shape, and form possible to try and get you, to reel you in.
Right. Yeah. But your instincts could be fighting that, but then their algorithms are fighting that.
Yeah. And what's more powerful, your instincts, your mind, or the social media algorithm?
Which will constantly adapt and get better with AI.
And of course, we're not attempting to do any of that here, but you do want to hit your subscribe, like buttons, smash all the ways to stay in touch with our show. We're just about to go to a brief break, and we'll be right back with the great Jim Ford.
Drinks, drinks, drinks.
How do you open this thing?
At the top.
Okay, let me hand that over there. Hold on.
Thank you.
For the guests.
Take a taste.
Tastes like beer, all right.
All right. We are back.
Definitely.
Yeah, we're back in, and normally we have bacon and coffee on the table. This time we have bacon and beer.
And tea.
Oh, and tea. So basically, given the nutrition theme of the show, it's especially important to be on top of our game in terms of providing the right hospitality to our guests.
Oh, come on now. That ain't even bullshit. That's bullshit.
I love that button.
I love that button too.
Take a sip for the mic. I don't know if I... Yeah.
I thought I did. Okay.
Oh, no. Do it right, man.
Beautiful. Music.
All right. There we go.
So I have a few questions. My first question is, in your opinion, actually, ladies and gentlemen, before I even get into my questions, let me just state here, complete and absolute disclaimer. None of us here are professionals, licensed in any way, shape, or form. Any advice that you take from here, just flush it down the drain. Flush it out of your mind. Do not take any advice from us. Always consult your health professional and do your own research, okay?
By not taking your advice, she means to actually supplement it with your own research.
Exactly.
And when she says we're not professional, we're completely professional at some things.
Yes,
and a
just
little
not in this
unprofessional at others.
Yes, that is the perfect way to describe it. So my first question is, in your unprofessional opinion, just kidding, in your opinion, are GMOs good or bad?
Well, they're definitely a mixed bag. It's a direction that we are going to go, and it just needs to be done in a reasonable way.
Yeah.
So there's all the weird, press, newspaper stories, what have you, out there about Terminator seeds, for example. And it would seem like it's our instinct to make our life easier. Mm-hmm. And then we get fat and weaker. But our lifespan keeps on strangely increasing, which is, there's some counterintuitive, counter-intellectual stuff there. But with GMOs, some of it would have happened anyway. We're just accelerating the process. Some of it we need to do definitely for survival as a species, so that as the climate naturally changes on its own, independent of any human activity, we need to have plenty of food to eat.
Yeah.
And that means we got to genetically modify every organism that we want to benefit us. And so it's kind of like you put your oxygen mask on first so you can take care of those around you of the highest value to you. And if you don't put your oxygen mask on first, then those people immediately around you of highest value are then more at risk. And this is rational self-interest. So you call it a virtue of selfishness. Everything has an A and a B in this universe so far that we can tell.
I'm the A, you're the B.
And otherwise, there would be no...
Did you call our guest a bee?
Yes. Yeah. That wouldn't be appropriate. So there's, you and the other, but it's you, we have to adapt. And so eventually we need to change our very DNA in order to evolve.
Yeah.
And
You mean hacking humanity?
we have to. So we don't have fangs and we don't have claws as much as some people might claim
So
to have.
unfortunate.
Right. And so because of that, or not necessarily because of that, but the mind is the ultimate tool. So we don't have fangs or claws, but we can split the atom. So because of our smartness, so to speak. But that might splitting the atom too much might equate to pooping in the house where you live and toxify yourself. So we have to do it as reasonable as possible.
Yeah.
And since everything has an A and a B, capitalism so far, empirically, it's the best system for management of human beings. It's the best we've come up with so far. We've tried other systems, and they result in a horror show. And so but still everything has an A and a B.
Yeah.
And so the B side of capitalism is like, oh, maybe if I make a seed that only lasts for so long and nobody can harvest it, it's kind of like, like it copyrighted, then you can't use it. And you have to buy more of it. And, or if I could only kill the bugs on this plant, that would be better, for my income. Well, okay, if I put too much pesticide on there, it toxifies the plant. Well, maybe if you make the plant resistant to the pesticide, then I could load up the plant with pesticide and then problem solved. But then you're, going to have to wash that plant off more. Or if you genetically engineer the plant to have its in like an amplified anti-whatever, because plants they produce all these chemicals that are antiviral, antibacterial, anti-spore, mold,
Anti-wasp.
fungus.
Let's just say anti-wasp, or like whatever bug it is that attacks the fruit or veggie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so then hypothetically, if you genetically modify a plant so that it produces more of its own natural toxins, then you eat it, well, and you're going to get more of that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter that it's all natural. We're more adapted to natural poisons, but that doesn't mean that it's still dose related. And the only difference between medicine and poison is the dose. It's really the dose per unit of time. So how much, again, got a gallon of vodka. Drink it in 10 minutes, probably a horrible death. Drink it in 10 months. So it's not just the dosage of the substance, how much, a gallon. Well, over what time period did you consume, this gallon of vodka? And that's, people, they don't know how to moderate, but then back to the moderation, you need to moderate your moderating.
Yes.
Because people basically, if you're constantly moderating yourself, then the system might think it's in some type of survival mode. And it's like, oh, got to be careful. We're not living in the land and time of plenty. So I'm going to turn everything down.
Yeah.
And so it turns down your hormones. It might turn down your thyroid to lower your basal metabolic rate because you're not eating enough. But then now you have a turned down thyroid. Well, that you're not going to feel optimally well. You're going to have hypothyroidism. Well, you're going to have to eat more. And so that's the problem with people dieting through lowering the calories too much.
Yeah.
Is they can turn down your thyroid levels. It's really turning down the conversion of one type of thyroid hormone to another. And, excuse me. And so people need to make sure they eat enough in order to be juicy and with their hormones.
Juicy.
Because
We like being juicy around here.
right. So if you don't eat enough, you get dry. Your skin will get dry. Mm-hmm. Your skin's not repairing itself fast enough.
Wow.
Your fat metabolism slows down. So again, you'll be dry instead of juicy.
I love that term. I want to be juicy.
But your glands need to secrete, and they'll turn down their secretions
Yeah.
if you're in survival. Like you're basically
Everything will run like not how it's supposed to.
right.
Like you're like you said, your skin will get dry. You'll lose elastic. You'll probably have a drier mouth. Maybe your eyes will start getting dry. Maybe the blood flow, the circulation in your limbs.
You get turned down,
Yes.
and you're not as and
You're not flowing properly.
yeah, enthusiastic. You could even lose some personality charisma because you're not popping.
Yeah.
Because you don't have that energy available to you. Popping. And because you're more, there are these people that they go on these what's called minimum calorie, maximum nutrition diets. So it's just the amount of calories they need with more than enough nutrients. And that's done in order to optimize the length of lifespan.
So
And then there'll be, yes, I put, blah, blah. And it's like everything's slowed down. And it's just like, no, but I'm sorry.
no, I wanted to ask because this is in my head. The way you're saying it is, I feel like and I guess I'm kind of talking about the GMO. Well, let's lump together GMOs, health foods, sweet foods, salts, carbohydrates, like every type of like research that one person can do. Do you think it would be best for people to actually just do their own research into it? Or do you think that could actually cause like some sort of crazy, you're good. You think it could cause like some sort of crazy, like over search, like over, I can't quite find the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, again, it's up to you and repeatedly trying something in a way that's not amazing. So doing your research, not just trusting a single source.
Yeah.
And there's complexity, and everything has a side A and B. And people quickly want to reduce things down to an active bit, and there's no B side to it. Capitalism is exploitive, or, well, no, it depends on a bunch of different factors. If you compare anything to perfection, perfection always looks better. But you got to compare that thing you're doing to real-time past empirical data to see if it's doing better. But people go with what I call like a prematurely transcendent ideal. Like, oh, it should be like this. Like, well.
It's a very naive sentiment to have, and you're absolutely correct. That is, I think the problem with, I don't want to say the problem with our society because that sounds super cliche, but the problem with our society, I'm just going to say it, is I guess right now, through social media, our society is partially being ran through the younger generations. And people my age and younger tend to be very naive, and they're doing exactly what you're saying by comparing perfection to whatever else. So the perfection of, oh, my eating habits have to be absolutely perfect. I have to have the perfect amount of fruits and vegetables and carbs, and they all have to be organic and non-GMO and free range. But of course, like you said, in your head, idealistically, perfection is always going to sound better. But just realistically, it's just not possible. You know, there are going to be some days where you want to eat an Oreo, and there are going to be some days where you want to eat nothing but fruits. And that's just how the mind and body works. And that can be said for not just health food. That can be said for how our society is ran. Again, like capitalism versus democratic socialism. You know, like there's just things that we've tried before that has never really worked. And yes, people like to compare those things and go, well, this just seems more perfect. But realistically, it's just, that's not how things are run. And you need to look at more sources than just your own idealistic.
Oh yeah, and it's instinctual. There are these different ages where, depending on your age, experiences, where you're living, there's going to be some type of modifier. But a classic one is going to be your age, and it makes sense. And that is, when you're young and growing up, one of the last stages you move through is idealism, the idealistic youth. And then as you get older, you tend to become like grumpy because you've seen all these patterns and it so rarely works out. You're essentially, oh, I see that pattern. That's not going to work out.
I know this. I know where this is going.
Right. And so you develop cynicism.
Yes.
You become cynic. Now, cynics, they have this agenda. Typically, the agenda is based on a past trauma or some type of pattern, negative pattern that they've noticed in the past. And so it's difficult to look forward to the future as you get older. And it's really important you look forward to the future.
Yeah.
That's a basic sign of well-being. I look forward to the future. And when you don't look forward to the future, you're like, well, that sucks. But when you're younger and everything's going okay, there's an instinct to be like, nah, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
And then till like maybe you fall several times and like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah. Failure. Failure. I think that's something that, this is something that just connected in my head right now. Okay. So my generation, millennials, and I want to say like anyone like 30 and under-ish, maybe like 35 max. But I think what started to happen is in the United States is they started celebrating everyone equally to make all of the children feel equal and to try and like make kids not feel so bad about, not winning. They give out trophies to the losers too. And this creates some sort of ideal mindset where kids think like, oh, like if this is how it is throughout my childhood, this is just how life is. Life is ideal and everything is always equal. And I think growing up, people haven't really learned the concept of, well, you're not always going to win. Everything isn't always going to go exactly how you plan it to go. And maybe that's something that wasn't really taught to the younger generations. And now they're having a really hard time learning realism other than idealism.
Yes, that's a good point. I think it affects every generation. So what you described is like you're living it.
Yeah, I'm living it right now.
But at the same time, like every 20 years, the person your age, whatever age you're at now, that could describe something similar. And then somebody gets older and they're like, can't get there from here, so, but what you said to handing out everybody an award, everything's got its A and B.
Yeah.
But so, and there's complex layers of A and B. So, so at the immediate level, like, oh, that kid is suffering. They're like, well, let's give him an award that makes him feel better. Well, so immediate gratification, and that makes you feel good. Well, the side B of that would be people need to have boundaries and like, well, you don't have to punish them, but but a standard of merit, a meritocracy, is like what you need to be a jet airline pilot. You can't have just like, oh, you identify as a jet airline pilot, and you need to be highly certified, qualified, trained. And and why not only choose the best? If someone's going to do open heart surgery on you or something like that.
Yeah.
So you still need these boundaries, and it seems like more and more people of today have fewer boundaries, and maybe that's why there's more addiction, because addiction and enabling seem to have to do with lack of boundaries. And it gets into in psychology, there's this concept known as self-efficacy, and I think it was developed from as a way to manage people's, like PTSD therapy, therapeutic for trauma or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's about support, and it's really, there's parental instinct there, where you encourage your kids and tell them you suck, you never,
You suck.
tell them that.
Get a job.
Right. That'd be like the tough love. But
I'm gonna do that.
it's you have to encourage people, then they believe in themselves,
Yeah.
and then somehow they'll through that positive self-belief, their skill level will jump up. And that's self-efficacy.
Yeah.
But if you do too much, then you end up with what's sometimes referred to as Dunning-Kruger, where people think, I'm awesome. It's like, no, you're not.
No, you suck.
And you see that on American Idol.
Oh my gosh.
That's
you're right.
American Idol. People go in and they're a voice.
The Dunning-Kruger show.
Right? They're a voice teacher on American Idol.
Yeah.
And we've seen this on American Idol. Someone comes in, they talk about themselves. Oh, I'm a voice coach, and then they sound terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And who told you that you can sing?
I personally
And how
know.
many people have you coached?
I know actually like a handful of people like that. And of course, I'm never going to name names because I'm not going to be the person to tell them. But
Just assume it's you.
just assume that it's you.
But
Yeah. Yeah, but I know a handful of people who are
Right.
voice coaches who I'm like, you should not be coaching people.
right. So, but hypothetically, there's another principle that should take care of it. And that's the Peter principle. And the Peter principle is people will rise and fall according to their own level of competence versus incompetence. Given a long enough timeline, people will be, no, you really do suck. And then that's the market. And that's the power of the market. The market rewards you if you're benefiting someone else outside of you. And the market, it decentralizes so that nobody's really in charge. It's just you're getting results. Okay, so you're getting rewarded. So,
Yes.
And that decentralizes authority, because overbearing central control obviously can't anticipate toilet paper shortages or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
It can't. The market self-corrects,
Absolutely.
and it has to be allowed to be open enough to have that feedback within the system. It's an informational system, and but it still might be too short of a timeline for you. So you got to think, okay, what's my pattern? What do I need? And also examine your friends. Are they friends? They're like, oh yeah, that's awesome. You're great. Or
Look around the table, people.
or do you have friends that are constantly telling you how much you suck? And then you start to believe that.
Do you even have friends?
Right. And then maybe you got rid of all your friends because you didn't trust them. But there is like this, and I don't know what would be the best descriptor, but there's this bootstrapping effect where you can get people just to perform better if they're encouraged.
Yeah.
And then they have that experience empirically, and that can be drawn upon to further get better, in proper grammar here, but more, better, faster.
More, better, faster.
Through proper.
I'm going to write a song called More, Better, Faster.
More, better, faster, folks. And we're going to go to break. Then we'll have a few closing comments from the great Jim Ford, who is here to provide us deep wisdom in an NPR voice.
Excellent.
All right, so let's bring it back in.
Bring it back.
All right. I
We'll
sorry
bring it
I
out.
almost spilled the beer there.
Oh, no, you're fine.
I can't process unless sometimes I like fidget around.
You like
kind of thing.
I feel we all do that. I've been doing it too. I've been like cracking my toes.
Right.
I whacked my knee on the bottom of the table.
I stub your toe. I'm like, yeah,
Knee whacker.
Right.
You knee whacker.
Okay, and we're back in on the closing comments of A Date with Destinee with the amazing Jim Ford, who is sharing deep philosophical wisdom that binds together multiple sciences, and all without any professional credentials. So that means do your own research, but do not dismiss completely the wisdom of our show. Now, the another thing, Mr. Jim Ford has agreed to come back to us a second time, so there will be another Jim Ford episode, and you are invited to submit your questions in the comments. Now, we've already established that the bad questions will come to me to field, and then any sensible and reasonable questions will go directly to Mr. Jim Ford himself on our subsequent episode. And did you have any final thoughts, Destinee, before we wrap it up?
I think I want to leave most of the questions. 'Cause I do have a lot of questions, but I want to leave most of them for the next episode. And what I'm going to do after this is I'm going to write them all down just so I don't forget. One, you really, really should write a book. I mean, just even if you were to like collectively write a lot of your thoughts down and then put them all on a wall and like piece them together, because you're very good at like connecting different like philosophies with
Disciplines.
Yes, exactly. But two, I want to learn a lot more about like the nutritional side, and I think our audience would love that too, because I like being able to convey useful tips for survival to anyone who's listening. I guess that's a reoccurring theme here.
And we all as humans kind of have to navigate our respective lives and do have to draw on multiple resources.
Yeah.
And so second, third, and fourth opinions are always something to factor in when you're making your own, setting your own life course. Mr. Jim Ford, did you have any finishing thoughts before we say goodbye to our audience for today?
No, it's been enjoyable. You've been gracious host and a lot of fun. It's interesting to be a part of. Thank you.
Alrighty, people. Until next time, make sure to smash the like button and all whatever other buttons help keep us in touch to grow our podcast. And you can show our support by wearing things like I'm wearing right now. I brought this in special.
Soy no more.
Hold on. Yeah, this is from the War on Press store. And I'm going to show you the front and the back. And then I'm going to take the shirt off. And no, just kidding. So, yeah, that's... And this is a famous This is a... what the fuck? This is a famous landmark that you'll drive by it all the time, but the restaurant's not there anymore. They closed the damn restaurant, but the famous sign was preserved as a historical landmark. And then the back of the shirt tells the rest of the story.
Just so I know.
Just so I know, you heard it here. And again, until next time, that's the wrap up of A Date with Destinee. How'd we do?
Oh, is this thing on?
Yeah. Is this thing on? Hello?